understand for many countries. But it's our history, and our history is what makes us unique. And going back again, we went through this process of the war that 90% of the population was killed and 60% of the territory was taken. The secret treaty signed between the three countries, they wanted to eliminate the country, so it was a war of extermination. They could, but they damaged the country in a way that it was still, for us, it's very hard to understand what happened over these 150 years, and we went through this very long dictatorship. So it was only in the 90s, 35 years ago, that Paraguay started really to develop the way other nations in Latin America did it 100 years before. So when we think about the human capital development and health and education, the things that many nations started to do early in the 20th centuries, actually Paraguay did it 70 years before. I mean, we eradicated analphabetism in 1850 when any other country did it. So this process has been very positive over the last 35 years. Paraguay has rebuilt its economy. It's a market open economy. We have free action for all the sectors. We have opened all the sector. We have just a few public companies that compete with the private sector, and they prove to be quite efficient. Energy, fuel, communication, not so far, but compete with the private sector. But the private sector has developed the economy. The economy, of course, benefit from some of the competitive advantage that the country have. 40 million hectares of arable land, a size larger than Germany, almost the size of Spain, for a population that is only 6 million. So the amount of natural resources that we have is enormous. It's enormous what we have. And I always say that Paraguay has a problem of abundance. We have so much land that we are not using the full potential of the land. We have so much water. Despite being a landlocked country, we are surrounded by these huge rivers, the Paraná and the Paraguay. The waterway is 3,200 kilometers that move the third largest fleet of barges in the world through the waterways. Paraguayan flag barges with captains that go up and down the waterway. And we have abundance of youth. We have the youngest population in Latin America. 75% of the population is younger than 45. So this is a tremendous asset. And despite being a relatively small indigenous population, our identity, our national identity, and our roots with the indigenous, with the Guaranis, is very, very strong. We maintain two official languages, the Guarani and Spanish. Our national currency, the Guarani, is the oldest in South America, together with the Colombian peso. So we take a lot of pride about our origins, our inheritance, our connection with Mother Nature. This is something very important. So that's why putting Paraguay in the map as probably the most sustainable country is something that resonates at large in the population. So clean renewable energy is of course an asset, but we think that there are others that make Paraguay a champion in sustainability. We produce food for 100 million people. We contribute only with 0.1% of all the gas emissions in the world. We are in the process of entering into the market of the paper mill and the forestry business, which is going to expand very rapidly. We think that Paraguay will produce 1 million hectares of new forest in the coming years, and a potential to build 3 paper mills. There's one already in construction. It's a 3 billion project going underway. And we think that we're gonna expand beyond our actual capacity, the food production. And this goes from more soy, wheat, corn, but also going to beef that is growing very rapidly, and beef, poultry, and pork. So all this is what we have today. What is that we are building for the future? And again comes our friendship with Taiwan. Many years ago, and when we were thinking about our mode of development, and we felt the pressure from China, and we saw Costa Rica, and we saw Panama, and we saw others, and I have the advantage of working in Africa, so I saw firsthand the relation that China was building with African countries. And I said, this is not what I want for Paraguay. So a couple of years back, we start to thinking, okay, what is the model for growth for Paraguay? It's not going to be only agriculture. This is a strategic asset. We have comparative advantage, and the world is growing, the population is growing, demand for food is growing. So there is a food security issue, and there are not many parts of the world that are able to produce food for their own population and to feed other parts of the world. We think that Paraguay has a responsibility worldwide in how we're going to be able to feed our population and other parts of the world. So we think that this will continue. We have already the assets, and we are expanding our access to different markets, not to depend on one single market, but have ample access to different markets. But at the end, what that will allow Paraguay develop and to reach OECD levels, and this is what we are aiming. Paraguay is not aiming to be a part in Latin America. Paraguay is looking, because we think that the capital endowment and the capacity of the country is to be at the level of the countries at the OECD. But for that, we need to go through industrialization and high technology and innovation. So education has been fundamental. So a couple of years later, when discussing with Taiwanese companies, and mostly with Foxconn, which is the manufacturer of iPhone, we said we want to manufacture the iPhone in Paraguay. So why not coming here to Paraguay? We have this very accessible tax regime. We have this maquila regime similar to what Mexico has with the US. And he said, perfect. So how many engineers do you produce every year? So we said, we're going to come later. So we went back to the government and said, we want to bring, and we use the MIT as a reference. We want to make the MIT of Taiwan in Paraguay. So we created 10 years ago a university, the Taiwanese Paraguay Technology University. So we are training 400 Paraguayans, 2 years in Paraguay, 2 years in Taiwan, and then training again, working in Taiwanese companies, working in high tech. So this is what Taiwan did 50 years ago, sending kids to study in the US, to work in Texas Instruments, and then brought them back to build the complex of semiconductors. So we are advancing and we are outreaching Taiwanese tech companies, US tech companies, to benefit of Paraguay geographic position in the middle of South America with abundant clean renewable energy, a country that is very stable, not only in terms of economic condition, but political. And I think the advantage of being a latecomer to democracy is that we suffer, I mean, it's still very recent for many Paraguayans, the hardship of dictatorship, the lack of freedom. So the model, the contract is so strong between 35 years of dictatorship and 35 years of democracy, that this is something that is non-negotiable. I mean, the population feels so committed, and of course, society, they want more. They want more from democracy, and we continue to do so. And I think this is one of the things that Paraguay still maintain. Two traditional parties, the Colorado and the Liberal Party, they are the ones who dominate politics. We had in the last election an extreme big movement. They got 20% of all the votes. So it was something, it was an anarchist who said, we need to eliminate the state, we need to eliminate Congress, we need to burn politicians. So, and there was part of the population that was, that message was resonated. So it's a source of concern, but at the end, we were able to win with a very large majority in Congress, and we built up a greater majority. And over the last 9 months, I passed probably 10 to 12 important reforms. Congress has approved absolutely all the reforms that I had put. Many of them were pending for many, many years. So my aim in the next couple of years is to continue to build the foundation for a society that is more developed, maintain the macro stability, which is a solid foundation, but we're building the walls of this society with education, health, a rule of law. That is something that we are working together with all political parties and all sectors. I call for an agenda with the Supreme Court and Congress to work on an agenda to fight corruption. And this is an endemic problem that we are fighting all together. Security is an issue that I'm working very, very strongly. We have the advantage of being next to a country like Brazil, which is very, very big and allow us to access the market through the Mercosur agreement. But also the risk of being next to a big country that you have these very large criminal groups like Primer Comando Capital or Comando Vermelho, who are a global criminal organization. And Paraguay has become a transit for narcotics in recent times. So we are fighting this. So this is something that we are also working very, very hard. But at the end, I think what will be the roof of this society is to leave that image of a landlocked, not a landlocked country that is limited geographically, but in terms of mentality. Paraguayans isolated from the world. And a great writer, Augusto Roa Basto, described Paraguay as the island surrounded by land. He wanted to demonstrate that we isolated, and there were very good reasons for that. I mean, our neighborhood had been tough, so it was better to live inward and not get out. But we are now in a position that we want to insert Paraguay into the world. Our relation with the US is fundamental. We feel identified. We have great relation for 150 years with the US. And we think that the next coming year, Paraguay could be the center partner, the main partner of the US in South America. We have all the conditions. It's just up to us, or it's up to me and my team to convince Senator Dodd and the administration that this relation really matters, and that this is a very nice story that needs to be told. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to give everyone a chance to ask questions, but if you don't mind, I'm going to ask the first one. You mentioned democracy and this, because I think one of the things that you mentioned that makes Paraguay so unique is that it's had this two-party system, this two-party system that's endured at this time when we see these disposable parties popping up, and it's one of the greatest challenges to democracy is the erosion of the party system. But like you said, you've got this very strong and stable two-party system. But you also mentioned that there is some dissatisfaction, you know, and this is not just Paraguay, right? This concern that democracy doesn't deliver, so we're not going to support it. We're not going to support it over other forms of government. So I know that when you assumed the presidencies, one of the first things you did is you set up an anti-corruption.
Yes.
And it was an interbranch anti-corruption body. And I think that's one of the concerns, of course, in the populace throughout the region is this issue of corruption, which leads also to a lack of faith in democracy. So I'd love to hear about that and where you are right now in this anti-corruption effort. Yeah,
we have the perception, and when you look at the corruption perception index, Paraguay stands probably in the worst position. And the name said this is the corruption perception, and the perception is not from people from the outside, but people from the inside. So Paraguayans perceive themselves as the most corrupt. Paraguayans perceive as the less developed, as a poor nation. And we have a problem. This is what I was telling you, that we need to change the mentality of the Paraguayans, that we are a country that we have everything to be among the most advanced countries in Latin America and probably in the world. But we need to convince ourselves. So in this process, we need to tackle the problem of impunity, and we have to tackle the problem because it's like insecurity. If you triple the amounts of officials on the street and you reduce criminality rates, but you have to wait one incident to people to feel insecure, right? And the same happened with corruption. Paraguay has a relatively small public sector. So this is something that we proposed many years ago. We lowered the tax rate. So this allows us to maintain a very small or relatively small public sector and a relatively small military sector after the dictatorship, and focus on delivering high quality services, right? So we need to improve the quality of the public sector. We need to address these issues, but we need to make awareness. Well, and awareness is we are not the worst, but we need to tackle this problem. This is something that happens and we need to face. And so my idea at the beginning is I don't want to point any other institution because in the past it was very easy. Oh no, the problem is the corruption in the judicial system because I find the people that when they go to the judicial, nobody goes to jail. Or Congress, no, the problem is Congress, they don't approve the law that we, I said, no, no. The problem is from everybody. We need to work together. We're not gonna name anybody. We're gonna push on this agenda all together. So, and this is in part of my own experience in engaging with Congress, engaging with the Justice Court, the Supreme Court of Justice. So I said, I'm not gonna name anybody. We work all together. You appoint your people. We're gonna have this agenda. So in 90 days, November, at the end of November, we approved the agenda. 70 measures, and this includes the development of new technology and system for transparency and tracking expenditures. Also approval of several laws, and we are implementing, and everybody feels part of the agenda. It's not my agenda, it's not the executive branch agenda, it's Paraguay's agenda. And we brought also all the international organizations that are collaborating, including the US government, who is helping in this agenda. So my personality is a very inclusive personality, so I don't want to leave anybody outside of the discussion, and it's working very well. I think that it's gonna make a lot of progress. We have a problem in how we perceive Paraguay, but also how other institutions perceive Paraguay. And I recognize that there are so many things that we need to improve, but I think that there is a gap between the perception and the reality. So while we continue to improve the reality, we also need to improve the perception. And they will meet, and I'm sure that both will do their part, the reality and the perception, but there is still a gap that we need to close.
So if you, I'll open it up to questions. If you want to just turn your tent card and then introduce say who you are, introduce yourself and where you're from, that would be great.
I'll just add a word before I listen to the others. First of all, this is not my dessert. I had a meal with the president earlier today at the White House. You guys gave a great presentation in terms of not only yourself, but also what your plans are for the future. Laura, good to be with you. I should have said hello to the president. And then it goes well, and members of your team, Mr. Foreign Minister as well, and Ambassador Dos Santos, it's good to be with you as well, and others who are gathered here today. You made some wonderful points this morning, and you did again here. But I thought it might be worthwhile to talk about the notion of regional economic integration and the things that you are doing. First of all, congratulations on the treaty with Brazil. I did not know this, but Paraguay is the most independent country in the world on clean energy, your hydropower. And that treaty with Brazil is critical, and be interested where other revenues may come from, but I congratulate you on that. And then something that you discussed this morning and had a very positive reaction with our group, and that was, of course, the road that's being built. It sounds simple enough, sounds like a 19th century idea, build a road to connect the Pacific and the Atlantic and the countries in between. And because it's all related, I think, to clean energy, to regional economic integration, I thought maybe you might want to talk about the more current and modern idea of the road. The road isn't just a road, but what it's intended to do and connect, including, of course, the high technologies of the company that. So it's a great piece of evidence, in my view, of your interpretation and your sense of the value of regional economic integration in the Americas.
Yeah, for decades, we were trying to find what is the best way to go from the Pacific to Atlantic, and Brazil knows that their market, the access to the Asian markets are becoming more and more important. In fact, the largest trading partner for Brazil is China, but they will not allow to lose sovereignty. So they rather go all the way around to get to the ports in the coast of Brazil, rather to go the other way around, mostly through the waterway, because the waterway already exists. It's a huge highway, but they refuse to use it because they said we're gonna be subject to the movement of Argentina. And that river is huge and it will never end. So they were trying to go through Venezuela, they want to go through Bolivia, go through the Amazon, and they have this huge problem. So they were never discussing going through Paraguay because Paraguay was like a black hole. It didn't exist. So a couple of years later, a couple of years back, we said, we're gonna build the highway. We don't need the money for it. We're gonna, and this is by far the shortest way to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So we began, and this was 2017. I was Minister of Finance at that time, and we did the first part of the Bioceanic Highway. Now it's being constructed the second part, and we're aiming to finish in 2 years. So these are 500 kilometers inside of Paraguay that will connect highways that already exist in Brazil. We're building a bridge with Brazil, and will connect to Argentina, and then there's already a system of highways that goes to the port of the north of Chile. So this highway will reduce the time to market by 22 days for Brazil. Most of the agricultural production in Brazil is concentrated in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, which is more landlocked than Paraguay. So this will be a major change. We are also thinking that this highway will also be the connection for broadband. We are participating with Chile in the Humboldt project, and we are already part of the project that goes through the Atlantic with Brazil. So the connectivity will go through the middle of Paraguay, exactly at the same level of the Bioceanic Highway. We're also thinking that this is the shortest way to connect the huge amount of gas that Argentina is extracting from Vaca Muerta that needs to go to Brazil, because the market is in Brazil. Right? Brazil is getting out of gas coming from Bolivia, so this makes a lot of sense. So we're talking a multi-billion-dollar gas pipeline that will go through the middle of Paraguay. And again, this is a great opportunity, but also pose a tremendous threat for Paraguay and security in that part, because this is 60% of the territory is in the Chaco region, but we cover 3% of the population there. So there's very few population, and we need to be able to control this. This is why we are putting the attention on improving our air control, buying new radars, buying new airplanes, because we need to control the Chaco. Today is the main source of income of narcotics that are coming from other countries and entering into Paraguay to be mixed with goods and export to Africa and Europe. So this is something that will change logistics in the region, and the potential for growth in producing more products, I think is great. And I haven't talked about electricity. We are using only 20% of all electricity that we produce. We are exporting 80%. This negotiation with Brazil, and just a few words on it. When Paraguay, the history behind the construction of the dam is the war, because after the war, it was never clear how much of the territory Brazil took out of Paraguay. There was never a delimitation of the territory. And there was a big falls in one part of the country, and we said this falls belongs to Paraguay, and Brazil said no, those falls belong to Brazil. So we have again in 1960 a conflict, and Brazilian troops entered Paraguay territory. They took Paraguayan military forces. So it was a big tension at that time. And the US again was fundamental, because at that time the State Department Secretary, he went to Paraguay, he went to Brazil, he intermediated, and after that we began negotiating on the construction of the dam. So we signed the treaty 51 years ago, and we wrote on the treaty that we're going to negotiate or renegotiate the financial terms in 50 years. Why 50 years? Because in 50 years, we're going to pay off 100% of the debt. And that happened last year. So when I was elected president, the first person I got on the phone was President Lula. And I said, the first country I'm going to visit is your country. So you rather receive me, otherwise I'm not going to visit any other president. So he received me 15 days after I was elected. And we have a great meeting, and we start building a great personal relation. But we knew from the beginning that Brazil was used to impose. They were never used to negotiate. Brazil never negotiated with Paraguay. And it was only when the foreigner country was in the middle that was able to recognize Paraguay good share. So it was 9 long months of negotiations and convincing them why this was fair and just for Paraguay. So we finally got this approved last week. And this means a lot of money for Paraguay for the next 3 years, because since they were using most of the electricity, they have the incentive to lower the price. And since we're not using, we'll have the incentive to max the price of electricity. So we agreed that for 3 years, we're gonna take the price up, and in 3 years, price will go down. So with all that money that we're gonna, and we're talking almost $3 billion for the next 3 years, we're gonna invest in our electric grid. So companies will come to Paraguay and use electricity instead of selling the electricity to Brazil and Argentina. So electricity, clean, renewable, are probably the most competitive prices in the world, because we're talking less than $10 per megawatt. This is something that will attract a lot of investment in Paraguay. So what is that we're aiming at? Our alignment with the US. We have this huge player, China. He wants to enter the South American market. They are putting their Chinese companies to enter. We cannot close the door for them, but we can open more the doors to another friends to come to Paraguay and make a good use and make Paraguay a safe haven for technology companies. I mean, this is a place that have no incidence on climate change. No earthquake, no volcano, nothing. This is like a country that you're not gonna have any of these disasters. This is a stable economic and political country. And we have this huge, abundant electricity. So I think that the opportunity is huge for us and for companies to come to Paraguay.
And for regional countries as well.
Of course, yeah. The region will continue to be complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a center player in Mercosur. We are in the middle of Argentina and Brazil. Uruguay is not a problem. We have a great relation with Uruguay. But we manage this equilibrium, low equilibrium between Brazil and Argentina. And of course, personalities matter. I mean, Argentina's new president, he's a complete change from previous administration, but he has his own agenda and he looks for a more open Argentina, but he's not so eager to be integrated for countries in Latin America.
Thank you.
Yes, Maria Julia.
Hello, how are you? My name is Maria Julia Diaz Araya, and I'm Public Policy Director for MERA for South America. So it's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Rebecca and President Camila, for inviting us. President, it's really inspiring hearing you and just listing an amazing amount of issues that are very important for the development of country, but also for the development of technology. So my question, thinking about youth, education, energy, an enabling environment for investment and also for innovation. I wanted to ask you about your vision for technology. How are you envisioning how technology can foster this development, and also how platforms such as us, our family of apps and our products can enable, maybe boost digitalization? And see, Minister Millán, we've had a previous meeting. We're meeting tomorrow too. Of course, we'll be able to dig deeper into this, but I wanted to hear your vision.
I will tell you one part, and then I will ask Gustavo to complete. A couple years ago, when I was thinking about, okay, we manage macro stability. That was the objective 2 decades ago. Is that we need to be a very solid economy. We don't want to be dancing tango and samba. That was the notion 25 years ago. If there was something in Brazil and we were very vulnerable to shocks in Brazil, if something was happening in Argentina, we need to forget, we need to be very solid. So we build a solid macro foundation. Our economy is solid growth. We don't depend on what happened in our neighbors. Of course, we depend on the world economy. We are a much more connected economy. But we said, a couple of years ago, when I get to the Ministry of Finance, I said, look, we achieved this. This is not enough. We need to do more. So a digital agenda was on the table, and we started working and said, look, I heard so many things about it, but who has done it? I asked. I said, Estonia is a good example. Okay, let's bring the president of Estonia. So I brought the former president of Estonia, to work with us. And I said, you're gonna have it. You did it. And you tell me how you did it, because I don't want to be buying data centers and computers, because this is not this. You need to change the mentality of the population for people to use the phone. I was at the central bank, and this is a nice story. I came back after working in Africa, right? So I said, we need to use digital operation. People, I mean, makes absolutely sense for Paraguay. It's a large country, population is dispersed. And I saw this model of M-Pesa in Kenya, so we're gonna replicate. And all the bankers were looking at me and say, are you crazy? This is not Africa, you need to defend our business, and we're gonna do it. So I wrote the regulation to allow the telcos to do transactions. So until today, Paraguay is the only country in the world with more mobile accounts than bank accounts. Till today. So, and this is because technology has a huge penetration. Telcos are very successful in Paraguay. Right? We are 6 million, and I think there are 8 million lines. I mean, people have more than one line, and they do all sort of transactions through the phone. They don't want to go to a bank branch. So with that in mind, I said, with a young population, we can change this very rapidly and incorporate technology and digital transaction. And this would also allow to lower the bureaucracy and control more corruption schemes within the public sector. So we drafted this, we have the agenda, and I was candidate 2017. I was hoping to be the president a couple of years ago. I lost in my first attempt, so I couldn't implement. So when we won last year, we said we're gonna move faster now. So we passed very rapidly two legislation. One that make all documentation available in the phone. In Paraguay, you don't need to have anything on physics. ID, driver's license, everything is on the phone. And the second legislation is that we forbid a public agency to request a document that is in another public institution. So for example, you need to do a process or an administrative thing, and they ask you for a document, that document is in another public office, they are not allowed you to ask. So forcing the back office of the public sector to work in this regard. So these are some of the ideas to make the life simpler. The other thing is I brought this guy from the private sector and never worked in the public sector. He always complained about the public sector. He said, now you're gonna work for the public sector and you're gonna eliminate the red tape. Because this idea of digitalization, of making a paper document, making now, or now is you can do it online. But most of the time, that document, it's not worth anything, right? Other than taxing you or collecting a fee, right? The Minister of Foreign Relations also suffered from this, I'm gonna tell you. But I said we're gonna eliminate procedures that have been there for 20 years. That makes absolutely no sense. So we're gonna work on that. So part of the digitalization is in really eliminating red tape. And part of the cost was that we were still collecting consular fees, and which make absolutely no sense. A country that need to integrate to the world, and the justification was that the Ministry of Foreign Relations finances budget through the consular fees. So I said we're gonna slim down the Ministry of Foreign Relations. So we closed 8 embassies in the world. 8, right?
No, 5 embassies.
5 embassies and several consulates. So. But we appoint how many ambassadors? 17. So we have a lot of people was complaining, oh, but you're closing. Well, we have these 17 embassies with no representation for years. Now we are appointing them. So, and I said, the Paraguayan Constitution state that the president is responsible for foreign relations. So I'm executing this one. But now passing to Gustavo, and Gustavo is also an example. Despite being a fan of civil service, I spent my career as a civil servant. I was trained as a civil servant, but I thought that it was very important to bring people from outside of the civil service with new ideas. So Gustavo, who I know for decades, he has been a pioneer in the technology sector in Paraguay in developing new companies. So I said, I need you on the other side of the street. So he came and is doing a tremendous job in that. So maybe you can add what we do in technology.
Yeah, I don't know what more to add, but basically when President Peña calls me, he asks me, he has a government plan, and he asked me to put a plan on the digital agenda. And that was the easy job to do, because I only said to him, we are going to do everything. You just need to add using digital to help all these plans to work on education, on security, on everything that we already planned. We are doing transfers, and that's why I'm working with all the ministry and thinking about how we can not digitalize the problem, but to digitalize the process that we need to help. That was what the president was saying about to take out the problems and using digital system to help us reduce all the process and changing how the system work, how the public sector work. And that's why we are looking in this internal agenda, because we have two plans there. One is how to modernize the public sector, but also how to the people to adopt the technology. And that's why we are working too much with the Ministry of Education in a plan that I was here a few months ago talking about education in the dialogue, and we were discussing how technology works, how AI can help teachers taking time in introducing learning by a student, not by a year, not by some mathematics or whatever, but using the AI to do a plan for a child to help them increase what they already know and to help them solve the problem that they need to solve. So this is the kind of thing that we are looking, because we have a lot of problem, a lot of basic problem in the education, but we need to give them the tools to integrate into the world with the skill that already most of them have the skill, but they don't know how to use those kind of skills, because they already born with a mobile phone, but they don't know exactly how to use it better. So we are working on this, and we are working also how security can be improved using face recognition, using cameras, using also different kind of strategy to reduce corruption in terms of having the papers not to be used anymore between institutions, because normally you digitalize the process, but in terms to go to the other institution, you don't have integration. So we are using an inter-exchange system in order to have all digitalized and not having this kind of problem. And in terms of attracting investment, what we are doing is using also streaming assets that we have with the hydroelectric, with the working with Taiwan in terms of the semiconductor manufacturer, working with them also in the cybersecurity side, and with the US, of course, also. And we are also planning in this connecting through the bioceanic, the Atlantic and the Pacific, using the Humboldt and the ELA link that that already exists. The Humboldt is in probably for the next couple of years being done, but we already established a relation with the Chancellor, with Brazil, in order to put in the agenda, because Mercosur have also a digital agenda from 2017, but never done nothing. It's only in the paper. So we are looking to move forward this kind of thing that are in the paper to go and execute it. So that's mainly the idea, and trying to have this kind of data center for use of a lot of excess of energy that we already have today. Education is part of the plan, and changing the mindset in terms of using the technology not to have a PDF, not to have a document digitalized, but to use the technology in terms of changing the way of education works.
Javier wants to add something.
Just to, hi Maria Julia. just to stir things up and put on the table some challenges and opportunities, and also I would call it obligations as well. You come from the technology sector, and technology, especially artificial intelligence, will demand and is demanding huge consumptions of energy.
On water.
So, yes, so the International Energy Agency is saying that the world by 2026 will demand only in the part of the industry of data centers, 1,000 terabytes. Okay, that is 1,000 gigawatts. Nobody understands this number, but this is the total consumption of Sweden and Norway every year, only for data centers for 2026. That's tomorrow, that's 2 years from now. So Paraguay has enormous abundance of energy, that's one part of it. But I also want to mix that with the climate challenge we have. Paraguay emits 0.1% of CO2 around the world. Right now, the discussion in Paraguay is that in order to export, and listen to this kind of, let me call it hypocrisy, Paraguay has to now fulfill some of the European Union demands on exportation of beef, cattle, soybeans. So they are saying they have to come from non-deforested areas of Paraguay, and you have to show that on paper. And we are telling the world, but we account for 0.1% of total emissions around the globe. And you're now demanding us to fulfill all of this paperwork to show that we are producing our beef from non-deforested areas when you actually deforested the whole of Europe. And right now you account for 18% of global emissions, China 30. So in order to do that, Paraguay offers, of course, an opportunity, and an opportunity is investment in the forestry sector. So we have, like the president mentioned, we have 99% of our land is arable, and you can grow trees. And the trees that you plant in Paraguay, they grow 2 times faster than the trees grow in Europe. So we can offer technology companies not only the energy, but the land and the forestry to invest in Paraguay and to counterbalance this huge consumption of energy. By the way,
Apple is doing already.
Apple is doing that in Paraguay. And Apple is a great example because there is also a lot of speculation around this. Because let's be honest, when you buy carbon credit, it is very hard not to fall under speculations or am I really buying a paper, a carbon credit paper, that if you go back and track the actual doing of the carbon credit, maybe there's no tree or plantation behind it. So what Google is doing is they're buying real assets so that there's no speculation and no one will doubt that the paper they have in their hands is not true. Because if you want to look at what I am doing as a technology company and to protect carbon emission, go to Paraguay and see huge extensions of land with forestry. By the way, this forestry plantation is now also producing money, has become a business because you have to cut and grow the trees, and that's where the cellulose plant the paper mill, is being built in Paraguay. So in a nutshell, Paraguay can not only give you an enormous source of energy, but also an enormous source on the problem of solving CO2 emissions if you really want to do it. Not if you want to speculate or buy some papers around the world which nobody can track.
That's really interesting, and thank you so much for the answers. We can follow up on those, and we can tell you about how AI is helping trace those carbon commitments late tomorrow. But thank you so much. It's really interesting. Follow up.
Thank you, Maria.
So I don't see any cards up, so actually I have a question, another question, if that's okay. So it's actually, it's about beef. And, well, first of all, I didn't thank you up front, Ambassador Dos Santos, for helping make this happen. Thank you so much. You mentioned Taiwan and China, and I would imagine that there is pressure, domestic pressure, well, Paraguay is the only South American nation that has diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And I imagine that there are interests in Paraguay who are pushing for a switch to China. And we had a question today in the Latin American Advisor about the impact of this US Congress's decision to kind of overrule the US Department of Agriculture's ruling that basically beef, I don't know the technical terms, but basically it's safe. Paraguayan beef is safe, and it's a lot of it, and it was like, my sense is it was a very rigorous process. But now there is a move in Congress to say, no, we can't, Paraguay overruling basically the US Department of Agriculture, which I don't think happens often. So I was wondering, I'm worried, and I know Senator Dodd is being just such an advocate for US relations with the entire region. Sometimes I think we take the region for granted. So I'm worried that sort of move could impact our bilateral relationship and could lead to more pressure on you and your administration to switch relations.
Not during my watch. Not during my watch, not during my term, definitely. But this was a hot issue during the campaign last year. And one of the candidate was openly campaigning in favor of China, and he was saying that if he were to win, he was gonna end the relation with Taiwan and go to China. I, on the other side, was arguing why that was not good for Paraguay, and of course, once I won the election, I continued to advocate, and I continue to do so, and I have a very strong voice, because I'm convinced. I went to Taipei when I was 20 for a training program. So I lived there, I saw the experience, and I think that Taiwan demonstrated that Paraguay path to development is possible, that we are not in a tough neighborhood, we are in the right neighborhood. And hardship sometimes is good, endurance is good, and I think this is the way, and I have no doubt that Paraguay has a huge potential to enter to semiconductors production, technology, use of electricity. I think that we have this, and we're gonna create a balance with Brazil, Argentina, China, and for this, I think that the US can be very helpful in reach to that point. So it was a hot issue. It's not an issue today, and of course on Monday before leaving Asunción, I have the visit of their beef producers, the beef industry. They all wanted to support Paraguay in their positions and to talk to the US government to continue to support, because we have to say when this was approved or was proposed in the Senate, the White House issued a very strong letter saying this is not right. This is trying to eliminate a scientific process, and it took 20 years for them to say Paraguay is safe, and we are absolutely sure that we comply with everything. And we are now in the process of opening the Mexican market, the Japanese market. So I think this is the response, and we argue that it's not good for countries that they have a high dependence on China, and when you send your goods and in the middle of the ocean, they say, oh, you know, we're not gonna buy it. I say, but what the contract? We don't care about it. This is the type of histories that you heard from shrimps exporters in Ecuador or banana exporters in Ecuador, and I'm sure many other countries in Latin America have similar experience. So I think that, and it's very funny because the pressure comes from different ways. I mean, one of the ways is from Brazil, our largest trading partner. So President Lula, in one of our conversations, he said to me, you know, Santiago, China is so big, what we are doing with them, all of our export and all that. I said, President, I recognize China is huge, but I'd rather cross the river to reach to Brazil than to go all the way through the ocean to get to China. So for me, it's more important to have more access to the Brazilian market, which today is still very hard for us to get. I mean, they're still very protectionist. So the couldn't to the argument.
Right, Desiree agreeing with Prudential Financial. A suggestion. I think this story needs to be told more widely so it can be, one, instructive to other countries, and to attract more investment in Paraguay. And just a thought, in 1996, I took a course at Harvard Business School with Bruce Scott. It's called Economic Strategies of Nations. And we looked at different countries and it reminds me of what you're doing. You're taking a very integrated approach, very dynamic. I think this could be an HBS case.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think this is a success story. We are on the brink of making a more success on many fronts. We have advanced faster than others. My intuition, I cannot assure you, my intuition is that Paraguay might become investment grade before the end of this year. That would be a big jump. I would call the attention, but this is something that has been in the making for over a decade. So I think this is a major step that Paraguay will take. I think that our entrance, I was mentioning to President Chinchilla that I went to the OECD many years ago. We were not part of the development center. I said, we want to make, you need to sign some of the requirements. I said, I have absolutely no restrictions. I mean, this is an open economy. We have no sector that say, we need to protect this sector. So we have advanced. We are a country program at the moment with the OECD. And our aim is to become a full member. I mean, it's a club. It's only by invitation. So this also requires a little bit of a lobby. But we think that these things will put Paraguay in a different, because the truth is, and I work for countries, small countries, it's very hard to get attention of small countries. You usually get the bad news coming out of the small country. You don't get the good news because we don't have a lot of think tanks. We don't have a think tank in Paraguay that is tracking what Paraguay is doing in terms of public policy. So that's why foreigners, when the Inter-American Dialogue look into Paraguay, we have a scholar from the US government coming a couple of weeks ago to Paraguay. And it was amazing. The amount of information that he's producing about Paraguay is incredible. He produced a podcast, a document, after his learning on Paraguay and how he sees the importance of Paraguay in terms of geographic location, production, and of course, political alignment with the US. So I agree with you. This is a story that needs to be told. I think that it's a very nice story. Of course, it's not absent of risk. We have risk, but I think that the upside risks are larger than the downside.
I know we're coming up on the end, but Desiree, it's up to you to get this in Harvard Business School as a case study. We'll do what we can here. We were just on the side, I think that Paraguay should play a central role in APAC. As you were talking about the gap between perception and reality, this discourse about Paraguay as this landlocked country, I think instead we should be talking about it as a connector, or as a bridge, and just to change the way we talk about Paraguay.
Center of integration.
Center of integration, I like that. I like that. Laura, do you want to close this
No,
out?
I would just say some final words, and if you allow me, I will do it in Spanish.
Sure,
Está bien.
absolutely.
Presidente, de verdad que ha sido muy refrescante. Particularmente yo diría que es refrescante recibir tantas buenas noticias desde un país de América Latina en estos momentos. Estamos muy seguros de que usted dejará un enorme legado en su país, que serán muchos los trofeos que seguirá acumulando, que el mundo cada vez mirará más hacia Paraguay como un ejemplo, como una inspiración. Pero además hay otro trofeo que también quisiéramos que se lo lleve a Paraguay. En el 2026 la Copa del Mundo regresa a América. Y claro, bueno, entonces nada más para ese aire, dentro de todas las cosas, que tenga muy buena suerte, pero que ojalá también la albirroja pueda llevarse por lo menos una buena representación en Conmebol y ojalá el trofeo de la Copa Mundo. Pero muchas gracias de verdad por esta visita.
Muchas gracias Laura, muchas gracias a todos ustedes. Y te adelanto algo, Laura, estamos muy expectantes en la Copa América, pero Paraguay va a ser sede de la Copa del Mundo en el 2030.
Ya se la dieron.
Ya no.
Wow.
Paraguay,
Pues vamos a
Argentina
Paraguay.
y Uruguay. Así
Así
que
es, que van los tres.
vamos los tres juntos, así que va a ser un momento histórico. And we are actually pushing for Paraguay a center of integration. We have the Organization of American States General Assembly coming to Asunción in a couple of weeks. I'm finishing my term as president of Mercosur in December, passing over to Uruguay. We're gonna have the FIFA General Assembly in Paraguay next year, and I'm pushing for more events. So I would be delighted to host a American dialogue event in Paraguay. So Rebecca, put on your agenda.
Okay, well, I'll be there I'll be speaking about security at
Great.
the OAS, so
Perfect.
I look forward to it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Claro, sí, claro. Parado. Yes. You're super.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yes.
One of the greats.
Yes, he is.
One of the greats.
Yes.
Yes, I bet.
Thank you very much. Oh my gosh, thank you. I know. They'll do it when you
Thank you very much for coming. Yes.